This year for Jamestown is our 40th year as a foundation in existence. We started off in those days basically helping Soviet bloc defectors find sort of purpose and meaning, and also to tell their stories to the West. So the very first Jamestown products that you may have heard of but not associated with us are Arkady Shevchenko, the Soviet Undersecretary General for Political Affairs at the UN, who defected, his book, Breaking with Moscow, and the Romanian intelligence deputy director, Ion Pasipa, whose book, Red Horizons, sort of really exposed corruption inside Ceausescu's Romania and led to, in some ways, the way in which that country unraveled. We've changed quite a bit since then. We're no longer handling defectors. The world has changed. But I think the core mission of Jamestown has remained pretty much the same over these 40 years. How do we get the information, the analysts, the people from as close to the source as we can to talk about our adversaries or countries of concern to the United States in ways that are, in the ways in which they see themselves, rather than the ways in which inside the Beltway we choose to see them, which I think for a lot of us in here we've discovered the profound difference between those two things. But this mission has been consistent for 40 years and it will continue to be so. And so today it's my distinct honor and pleasure to introduce Dr. Willy, who is a senior fellow with the Jamestown Foundation, one of the core contributors to China Brief. He's an adjunct professor at the Center for Chinese Studies, the History Department, in the Master's Program for Political Economy at the Chinese University of Hong Kong. And he's also the author of 6 books on Chinese politics. The latest is Xi Jinping, The Hidden Agendas of China's Ruler for Life, that was published late last year. That really is coming out. It's the kind of thing that we wish we could have for sale, but the publisher is perhaps less than cooperative in getting those things out. It's also my distinct pleasure to have Peter Martin here to discuss with him. Not only is he the author of those recent Bloomberg pieces on corruption in PLA, but he's the global defense intelligence correspondent at Bloomberg News. He's the author of China's Civilian Army, The Making of Wolf Warrior Diplomacy, and of course, his most important tagline in his resume, he was a contributor to China Brief 10 years ago. And I think it's worth noting, I took great pleasure in catching up with a journalist friend who said, in college we read China Brief religiously because it was the only game in town. Today there's a lot more distraction, but it's still the only publication of its kind. And with that, turn it over to 2 of the people who have made it what it is, Willy and Peter.
Well, thanks so much. It's great to see all of you here, and it's a real pleasure for me to interview Willy, who I've been reading since I first had any kernel of interest in Chinese politics. So, Willy, we'll kick off with a kind of discussion between the 2 of us, and then we'll open it up to audience questions. But I wanted to start off asking you. You've written a book about every Chinese leader since Deng Xiaoping. And recently, as you focused on Xi Jinping, how do you think about the way that he's left his mark on Chinese politics? Are we seeing continuity with the past, or has China really taken off on a different trajectory here?
Right, yeah. Thank you, Peter, and thanks our audience. Thank you for coming in on a cold day. My first message is consider buying this book. Just search Amazon. Okay, just search Amazon. I would open this discussion by revealing a few state secrets. Okay, revealing a few secrets. So first of all, a plug for myself. I'm actually older than Xi Jinping. Okay, so this is a long-held state secret, and because of this, I always just call Xi Jinping Xiao Xi. Okay, Xiao Xi. Well, in China, it's called maybe 12, 13 different kinds of fancy things. The lifelong core of the party leadership, the guiding light of the Communist Party and the country and so forth. Okay, but for me, it's just Xiao Xi. Okay, And the second state secret is that other things being equal, and predictions of people like Peter here don't come true. If they don't come true, then more likely than not, and I'm putting my money on that, and that is Xi Jinping just got his unprecedented in recent Communist Party history third term in office. You know, starting as you know, there are no real elections in China except what we call Chinese-style elections, which is like Chinese-style criminal trial. The distinctive mark being that you know the results before the ballots are cast, and you know the results of cases before the judge makes his final statement. But there are indeed they are going through the motions once every 5 years to select a political standing committee and general secretary. And normally, according to the rules and regulations stated by Deng Xiaoping, and I have to admit that I remain a big fan of Deng Xiaoping despite what happened on June 4th, 1989, and I was in Beijing. I was a foreign correspondent in Beijing the 3 years running up to June 4th, and I left on June 6th, okay, when there were tanks everywhere in the thoroughfares of Beijing. But anyway, Deng Xiaoping, at least in the first 3 years after he's come back at the third plenary session of the 11th Central Committee, that is December 1978, for 3-4 years he was serious about, if not political, at least institutional reforms. Okay, he wrote this famous article in which appeared on People's Daily on October 10, 1980, called the Reform of the Party and State Institutions, in which he said explicitly that there must be strict term limits for the #1 leader, okay? And there must be no personality cult, no ideological mass campaigns and so forth. So that's why eyebrows were raised when Xi Jinping got his third 5-year term, which will last, you know, from the 20th Party Congress last October. And actually, this book, a good part of it is about the Congress, you know, the run up to the Congress and its aftermath. And I'm quite sure that unless predictions by my good friends like Peter come true, Xi Jinping will serve one more 5-year term until 2032, okay? Until 2032, but he will be only 79, okay? Only 79, comparable to the current ages of the two frontrunners for the US election, okay? He will be only 79, and China is also different from the US. The Chinese revere the old generation, okay? And for somebody in his 70s, like myself, we are considered to have just crossed the threshold into middle age, okay? So, so he will still be a young person with Chinese characteristics.
You come back here running on eyewitnesses.
Yes, by 2032, okay? And the story doesn't stop here because, as everybody knows, the position with the most power in China is neither the General Secretary nor the State President, but the Chairman of the Central Military Commission, the Commander-in-Chief, okay? So he might follow the Deng Xiaoping model because Deng never became head of the party, nor did he become the State President, but he was Chairman of the CMC until pretty much 1-2 months after the June 4th massacre. Okay, so he could help the meeting. But the help of leaders it's a state secret, okay? And I'm sorry that I can't disclose much about Xi Jinping's health, even though I know more about the health of former Premier Li Keqiang, okay, who mysteriously had his rendezvous with Karl Marx when he was just 68, okay? When he was just 68, when he was swimming in a private club in Shanghai, okay? But this is, sorry about this digression. But anyway, so this pertains to a very important question, which perhaps we'll discuss during the Q&A period, and that is the issue of Taiwan.
Hold on, Willy. Before we go to Taiwan, I want to ask you, why do you think that Xi Jinping will stop after 2 or 5 year terms?
There are no reasons why he should stop, but I think, well, he has a very thick face, but I think to have served 4 5-year terms as General Secretary, even for such a person as Xi, who thinks that he is the second, if not the first, most important leader in the Communist Party pantheon, he definitely thinks that he has outdone Deng Xiaoping in terms of contribution to the party. So he thinks of himself as a 21st century Mao Zedong, okay? And but even though he has a thick skin, I think he would stop at going beyond his 4th term, and he could just as well be the power behind the throne if he were to stay on to his position as commander-in-chief, and he would vacate the position of the state president and general secretary to somebody else, okay? To somebody else, you know, taking the Qixi Empress Dowager model, okay? So the Empress Dowager remained the power behind the throne. You know, Guangxi came to a very sad ending. But anyway, I'm sorry for this long digression, but returning to your first question, I actually published a book 5 years ago, also by the same publisher, Routledge, called Chinese Politics in the Era of Xi Jinping, which was about pretty much about the first 3-4 years of his stewardship. Okay, so this book is in a way a sequel to that first book, but focusing on actually events after the pandemic broke. Okay, so in the past few years, particularly events in the run-up to the Chinese Party Congress in October 2022. Okay, and before we resume our discussion, I would just add that the most important point I want to make, which has happened after the publication of the book, is that well, as Willy, you know, who unfortunately passed away a few years ago, but he was at the height of his career, the executive vice director of the organization department, okay? So Willy wrote a very sarcastic article saying that, well, I have met Mao Zedong and I have met Xi Jinping, and never did it come to my attention that Xi Jinping is really just a primary school graduate and he knows pretty much nothing about international finance, economics, and geopolitics and so forth. Well, this may or may not be true. I think we could debate this until 5 p.m. today. But Xi Jinping is undoubtedly good at one thing, okay? And that is imperial palace type, you know, Machiavellian style maneuvers in court politics, okay? Imperial politics. So, just very briefly, when he first came to power, unexpectedly in November 2012, there were 2 major factions in the party, and there was no so-called Xi Jinping faction. Okay, the 2 major factions were, of course, the Shanghai Gang and the Tuan Pai, the Communist Youth League clique, which was partially founded by Hui Obang and whose leader until today is Hu Jintao, the former state president. Okay, but within 10 years, Xi Jinping managed to elbow aside, if not to at least partially demolish these two reigning major factions in the party. And by the time of the 20th Party Congress, if you look at the name list of the Central Committee, the full members, the alternative members, and also, of course, the name list of the Politburo and the Politburo Standing Committee, about 80–90% of them are members of the Shizhajun, okay, the family army of Xi Jinping. Okay, so this testifies to his almost impeccable grip on power struggle, on as I said, Machiavellian style court intrigues within the party. Okay, and however, let me come to one of my major points of discussion, and that is Peter is also an authority on this. Okay, and that is there have been very strange events in the past half year. Okay, beginning with the disappearance of Qin Gang, the foreign minister, and then the disappearance of the former defense minister, Li Shangfu. Okay, and then we know for a fact that 3–4 dozen at least of the major generals, lieutenant generals, full generals in the rocket force, in the equipment procurement departments, and also more recently in the strategic development department. The commander with a very unusual Chinese surname, Zhu, as in Zhu Da, huge. And this is indeed a huge deal. Okay, General Zhu Qiansheng also disappeared and was detained. Okay, and one of the reasons why the third plenary session of the 20th Central Committee has been repeatedly delayed was that at this forthcoming plenum, which I think will be held right before the NPC, ostensibly to confirm Li Chang's political report to the NPC, Xi Jinping is still scratching his head about the name list, the people who will replace these now disgraced Central Committee and full members and alternative members, because he has to fill in 20–30 names, the new Central Committee full and alternative members. Okay, but the most important point that I want to make is that the unusual events in the past 6 months, beginning with the disappearance of the foreign minister Qin Gang, begs the question of actually how good Xi Jinping is in terms of managing high-level personnel, particularly in POA, which for Xi Jinping is the key sector of the entire committee. Okay, how come all these people, Qin Gang, Li Shangfu, and Li Yuchao, the former commander of the rocket force, all these are well-known members of the Shizhajun, the Xi family army. Many of them have been groomed personally by Xi Jinping himself. So my old professor Wu Guoguang, now at Stanford University, has theorized that Xi is taking up the Stalin model. Okay, because in the bulk of his career, Stalin sent most of his political foes to Siberia. Okay, but in the last few years of Stalin's career, he began a purge of his own people. Okay, of his own people, those people who had been handpicked by Stalin. Okay, but the logic of Communist Party politics and power struggle is such that, not unlike Mao Zedong, even though Mao's story is entirely different from Xi's. Okay? So after getting rid of handpicked, okay, they become totally paranoid. I'll give you the Chinese proverb, okay? When they look out up to the landscape, every tree, every shrubbery, every plant looks like a soldier, okay? So, so now, all these strange events in the past 3 months, they beg the question of actually how good Xi Jinping is in his well-known and perhaps only forte, his ability to manage high-level, top echelon cadres, particularly in the PLA, which to him is the key to the entire party. Okay. So sorry.
Well, no. I mean, I wanted to pick up on a couple of things there. I mean, one, what's the answer to that question? How good is he at that? And kind of related to that, I think something that is puzzling a lot of people in Washington at the moment is you look at the state of the Chinese economy, you look at the backlash against Chinese foreign policy in Europe, at the state of US-China relations for the last 10 years, you look at the state of PLA corruption. Why are there so few signs that any of these problems that she faces and has had a hand in dealing with, why are there so few signs that it's resulted in any organized opposition to him or any backlash against him?
Right. Well, regarding his political enemies, I think Xi Jinping in his 11-year career has made a much larger number of enemies than those of Jiang Zemin and Hu Jintao combined, okay? But the fact of the matter is, Xi Jinping was so successful in his first 10 years. He was so capable of filling up the entire membership of the Central Committee and the Politburo that his most potent enemies now, I think, consist of rebel elements of the so-called Hong Dai, second generation princelings, particularly people like the retired General Liu Yuan, the son of the very first Chinese state president Liu Shaoqi. Okay, so I think you and some of your colleagues have written about Liu Yuan's now famous article, which he published about 2 months ago on the anniversary of his father's birthday. An article warning that the party should not go against the principle of collective leadership and democratic centralism and so on. Okay, an unmistakable jab at Xi Jinping. Okay, because Xi Jinping has broken all the rules set up by Deng Xiaoping, which I enumerated. No personality power and so forth. So, but none of his enemies, not these second generation instincts, nor the remnants of the Shanghai Gang, nor the remnants of the Youth League, were able to coalesce and to pool their resources together to form a united front against Xi. Okay, so and this could be a conspiracy theory. There might be quite a number of enemies who are actually happy that the economy is tanking. The relationship with the US is worst since Henry Kissinger's visit to China in 1971. There might be people who are glad that such negative events are happening, so that they have enough ammunition to use against Xi. Okay, but for Xi Jinping himself, he doesn't pay much attention to economics or geopolitics. Okay, but there have been recent indications that I think Bloomberg published an article a few days ago saying that the central government is ready to pump in 2 trillion yuan of injections to save the local level administrations, which have run up debt amounting to almost 98 trillion yuan. Okay, 98 trillion yuan, and according to the best estimates, more than 50% of the expenditure of local governments are just used to pay the interest of the debts they had run up before. Okay, so so things have gone to such a pass that even Xi Jinping has well, regarding the U.S., if you look at his conversation with Joe Biden in San Francisco, the recent conversation that Liu Jianchao, former assistant foreign minister and now ministerial level head of the Zhongnianbu, the international liaison department. Even though the fact that they send somebody, because the Zhongnianbu, his mission is to handle party-to-party relations. Okay, so until recently, the most important task of the Zhongnianbu is to handle CCP and the North Korean political party. Okay, so the fact that they send a party person to Washington, okay, itself was very strange. And then, of course, Li Qiang's speech at the Davos World Economic Forum, saying that, claiming that China would go on Deng Xiaoping's reform policy and so forth. So Xi Jinping seems to be quite anxious to reassure, if not the U.S. government itself, at least the multinationals, to at least, well, if not put an end to, at least slow the pace of withdrawing from China. Okay, because I think most of you are familiar with the terrible figures coming out of China, but I'll just cite one figure, that is in the most recent quarter, the second most recent quarter, July to September. Okay, there was, for the first time since China's entry to the WTO, negative foreign direct investment. That means foreign business people are putting more money out of China than they are investing in China. Okay, to the tune of $11.8 billion US. Okay, this was unheard of, negative FDI. Okay, and of course, I was also cited a Bloomberg article saying that this 5.2% growth rate is total BS. I think your article.
That doesn't sound like a direct quote.
I think the Bloomberg article cited the Rhodian group, the respected research of it, saying that the Rhodian group's estimation is at most 1.5% GDP growth. Okay, so okay.
So, I mean, I'm curious to ask you, there's insatiable appetite in Washington for information on China's political system. Yet traveling to China is becoming more difficult. Having frank conversations there is becoming more difficult. And also, China is pulling a huge amount of information off government websites and databases, and so doing open source work is becoming more challenging. And, as someone who's been looking at the political system for multiple decades, I wondered if you could talk all of us through how you do that. Like, how do you keep up with the open source? How do you interrogate that with people that you're interviewing? How do you thread it all together?
Well, again, blowing my own trumpet, I made my first trip to Beijing in 1972. Okay, 1972, just 1 year later than Henry Kissinger and my good friend, the former ambassador to China, what's his name? The former assistant of state for the decision of this. But anyway,
Chas Freeman? Winston Lord?
Winston Lord, yes. I know the Lords quite well. His wife is a good writer. So, but yes, things are getting very difficult. So that's why I'm calling you up almost every night. At the most convenient hours to check information with Peter.
If it turns out I'm your best source, you're really in trouble. That's not a good sign.
Well, at least I produced this book.
That's true.
You know, I should give you more credit on the front page. You know. But I have to say that in this age of fake information and well, my old professor who called this rim jam, okay, the battle of how one gets one's information and the intelligence one's information. Okay, the Chinese have been extremely good at that, and if you look at the Taiwan election, I think the KMT, which the CCP really supported, they got 35%, 36% vote, and I think quite a good proportion of these votes were generated by CCP, generated by CCP. We'll talk about Taiwan. So there have been credible records of the CCP paying as much as $1 million US for people to run in the parliamentary elections for people who are not good background, of course, to run parliamentary elections, and eventually, I'm not saying that the CCP is responsible for this, but lo and behold, you see that the DPP lost its majority in the legislative yuan. So anyway, but in spite of this, I think there are a handful of I don't know the important word for this. You know, perhaps internet rebels. The Chinese hired about up to 20,000 people, you know, policing the internet. But I think there is a sizable fifth column amongst these 20,000 people, and sometimes you realize that they are mounting a disinformation. Okay, so for example, when Qin Gang, you know, the foreign minister, disappeared, the propaganda department deliberately allowed all these juicy details about his friendship with the Phoenix television star Fu Xiaotian. It was deliberately allowed to stay on the social media, you know, because otherwise, according to normal logic, those stories would have been scrubbed off, you know, 70 hours later. Okay, but they deliberately allowed all this juicy gossip about Fu Xiaotian and Qin Gang to stay on the internet just to divert people's attention. Okay? Because the reason why Qin Gang fell was definitely not because of his relationship with that reporter, but something else, okay, such as espionage and so on. But as I said, I think that is enough of a fifth column amongst these 20,000 full-time internet police people who would allow a cooperative, even sometimes critical Jinping to stay on the net for just 3-4 hours. And
so it's about looking for those deliberate leaks and knowing how to interpret them.
Right. And we have people from Falun Gong today. The Falun Gong people are very good at you know, picking up such pieces just minutes before they were scrubbed from the internet. Okay, and also we have people like what's his outfit in New Zealand, what's his outfit, specializing in publishing, you know, forbidden.
China Digital Times.
Yeah, China Digital Times, and there are many such outfits. Okay, in the U.S., Hong Kong, and Taiwan. Okay, so that is in theory no lack of information, and I have to say that the foreign media, particularly Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal, Reuters. I'm sorry if I miss some names here. Sometimes the New York Times. They have been unexpectedly good, unearthing information. Okay, for example, Bloomberg piece 2 days ago about this rumored injection of 2 trillion RMB to help those companies in trouble, which have put one seal with Beijing. Okay, there are, I think, 2 trillion yuan is far insufficient to save these thousands of companies which have run out of debt. But at least this is something. I would give a lot of credit to the Beijing-based, or sometimes based in Taiwan, since they are taking off Beijing. I think one of your colleagues in the Western media are now forced to be based in Sydney.
Right. It's become increasingly difficult to. Why didn't we open it up to audience questions?
Sure.
We'll keep the conversation going. Hi. Please.
Yeah, my name is Klaus Laris. I'm from the Wilson Center. Thank you very much for your explanations. Most insightful, most interesting. My question would be, China and Xi Jinping has lost the United States for quite some years, meaning the Chinese also seem to have lost Europe, particularly with what Ursula von der Leyen, the Commission President, is doing. Isn't that an even greater blow to Xi Jinping than losing the US, which was kind of expected? And what are the Chinese, what is Xi doing in reversing that trend?
Well, I'm afraid that, as I said, Xi doesn't know that much about geopolitics, and we have to give the Xi leadership some credit, for the recent apparent switch to what some people call is now diplomacy, even though that hasn't helped, because the target of the street talk is multinationals, okay? But multinationals, companies like Blackstone, even Walmart, and Hewlett Packard, and even Foxconn, they haven't slowed down their pace of withdrawing from China. Okay, in fact, this also explains for the fact that the Tokyo stock index, for the first time in some 30 years, they have returned to the record high registered in 1989, 1990. Okay, so with Europe, it's a difficult. It's a difficult mission. Okay, it's a difficult mission. So I think you might remember that until the pandemic and until the Ukraine issue, China established this 1+16 mechanism, with the Eastern EU countries, including some countries which are former members of the USSR. Okay, so for the time, there were yearly or biannual meetings between China and the 16 small EU countries. But these 16 EU countries include countries on the eastern flank of the EU and NATO. Okay, and once the Ukrainian war broke out, this mechanism, 1+16 mechanism, has broken down. Okay, and but I believe that the Chinese government still has some supporters amongst big companies. The machine building sector, the chemical sector, even in Germany, pivotal country in the EU, and of course they can still rely on the support of Hungary and so forth. So I think they have pretty much pull out all the stops, except that not much is actually working. Not much is actually working.
I want to pick up on that a little bit. I mean, how much does China care about European? I think it's kind of interesting if you ask Chinese scholars and officials and point out all of this backlash, they'll say, well, you know, Europe is not the future, but the global south is the future, and we're doing just fine there. Is that just defensiveness, or is that really how they think?
To some extent, that's really how they think. Xi Jinping is obsessed with this old Mao Zedong slogan, the East is rising, the West is declining, and he is, I think, unrealistically hopeful, unrealistically bullish about the future of this so-called axis of autocratic states, made up of China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, Pakistan, and so forth. And at the last meeting of the BRICS in Johannesburg late last year, China, Russia, and so forth wanted to expand the membership of the BRICS, because now the BRICS only include those 5 countries, right? But they wanted to recruit at least a dozen odd countries, but they ended up only with 6, okay? 6 countries, including minor players like Ethiopia and so forth. I'm not sure whether they were able to recruit Saudi Arabia. It's possible. Let's just check. But in any case, Xi Jinping is still stubbornly optimistic that his, this China-centric axis of autocratic states would grow bigger. Okay, would grow bigger, and one day perhaps after Xi Jinping is gone, one day he could really challenge the US-led EU and plus Asian allies as the rule setter regarding international law and so forth. But I think, in my first book on Xi Jinping, 2015, and my current book, I made some reference to Xi Jinping being a disciple of this warring state period legalist school, okay, whose most well-known scholar was Han Fei, okay. Han Fei was an advisor to the Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, and they set up this legalist school, which actually, arguably, is more influential than Confucianism as a guide to governance for emperors since Qin Shi Huang all the way to the Han, Ming, Qing, and so forth. Okay, and one of Han Fei's most famous aphorism is that to maintain stability of your country, to maintain your country's power, you should do 5 things to people. The first thing is to render them weak. Okay. Second thing, to render them poor. The third thing is to render them over fatigued. Okay, because in the Qin days, the lowly peasants were just supposed to spend all their time tilling the fields and also training as militias, okay? And I don't have time to talk about the militarization of Chinese society, okay, which is happening at a very disturbing pace. But, concluding Han Fei's famous instruction, and also to render the people submissive. And the last thing is to render the people ignorant, okay? Ignorant by total censorship, okay? So that's why, if you remember, Qin Shi Huang was infamous for burning several thousand books, okay? Of course, in those days, there were no books as we understand them, but characters written on bamboo slabs and so forth, okay? And he buried about 1,000 disobedient intellectuals.
Hold on, Willy. I'm going to have to put a pin in legalist philosophy for a second. I get another question from the audience. Please.
Yes, thank you so much for speaking today. You talked about the kind of the end of the Tuanpai Shanghai. Some have written, like Wu Wang has written about new factions emerging within that Xinjiang. I'm wondering if you agree, if you see any kind of specific factions, if you see any trends of how this might affect the next 5 to 10 years.
Oh, thank you. Well, I can never contradict my former teacher, okay? And I must recommend to you the most significant book written by Professor Wu Guoguang, and that is his 1999 book, which is a transcript of the discussions within Zhao Ziyang's political reform group, because Wu Guoguang was then the number 2 in the opinion department in the op-ed section of People's Daily, and he was recruited as a opinion secretary. But he was the only person who has taken down the full notes of the speeches of the participants in the Zhao Ziyang's semi-private political reform group. But anyway, I forgot to point out the significance of the partial demise of the defense aerospace establishment. Okay, because one of the new things which Jinping has done is to groom an entire new faction within the party, consisting of credentialed rocket engineers. Okay, well, these are real rocket engineers. Okay, but as I mentioned, in the past few months, 3 top leaders of Norinco, CASC, CASIC, these China aerospace companies, they have been detained. And despite the fact that there are 3 alumni of the aerospace faction now holding positions, for example, Ma Xingrui, the party secretary of Xinjiang, is a founding member. So there is still a sizable number of top officials from that particular faction, which is new. Okay, even though the first time that a rocket scientist was inducted into the Central Committee was actually during the Hu Jintao era. Okay, during the Hu Jintao era, the former party secretary of Hunan, I don't remember his name. But anyway, yes, Xi is facing opposition, and turning to a relevant subject, the growing number of protests, from the people who have bought this land, this unbuilt apartments for which they are paid the entire sum of the apartment. Okay, but as you know, Evergrande and these real estate moguls have already said long ago that he has no means to complete those uncompleted apartments. There are people who cannot take out their own money from banks. These are bona fide depositors in banks, but when they get into the bank, they're told that you can, on a daily basis, withdraw at most 4,000, 5,000 RMB a day. Okay, so there are protests all over the place, and worst of all, the local administrations don't have money to pay the civil servants, including the police. Okay, including the police. So that's why one new development has been the establishment of militia within enterprises. Okay, first amongst the successful SOEs, and then now even amongst the relatively well-off private companies. Okay, they are told to set up militias within the companies, but their responsibility includes maintaining law and order in the vicinity of the enterprise. Okay, so that's why this is part of my suggestion about the unhappy militarization of the people, and this dovetails with one of Mao Zedong's famous instruction, and that is 平战合一, the symbiotic relationship between peacetime and wartime. Okay, so now from one perspective, you can say that Jinping is preparing the country for war with Taiwan. So he has done quite a lot in militarizing the entire populace.
Right. Let's take a couple of questions. How about we go to the back of the room? Two people there sitting next to each other.
Hi, my name is Laurel Schwartz. I was a principal in Beijing for several years, and now I work in public education, diplomacy stuff in DC. So as I'm sure you know, when Xi Jinping was in San Francisco, he pledged to have 50,000 American students go to China over the next 5 years. The Chinese government has been sending out a lot of signals that they're very committed to that at a rate of about 10,000 a year. They've been engaging with the US government on this, including some embassy projects from our embassy in Beijing. How much do you think that this is real? How much do you think this is just a charm offensive? How much is this something that is actually realistic? And how much do you think it's just gonna be decimated by hawks in both Beijing and DC?
Right, thank you.
Oh, let's take the second question as well and do it together.
Sure. Very quickly, I'm looking at your economic plan. To what extent has Xi mapped out a succession plan, and do you think he lends adequate consideration to a post-Xi Jinping PRC, or is he pretty much stuck in the moment and looking only at his legacy and his reign?
Okay, thank you. Well, most of my friends in China are saying that, I'm sorry, this is a sexist attitude, that luckily Xi Jinping doesn't have a son, okay? He might have several illegitimate sons, but legally he only has a daughter, okay? And this reminds me of what I heard when I was in Korea. People were saying that you Chinese would be in big trouble had the son of Mao Zedong not died in the first few weeks of the Korean War. Okay, so now again returning to the censorship. One of the reasons why Mao's son Mao Anqing died was that he was working as a Russian interpreter in the headquarters of the Chinese army, and they accidentally got by some eggs. Eggs were considered a luxury in the North Korean time. So Mao Anqing, for some reason, spent too much time cooking his egg rice dish. And recently there was a talk show host. Even in China, cooks are becoming celebrities. So this cook repeatedly made reference to ways and means to cook the best rice, fried egg rice, okay? And subsequently, in no time, all his pep talks, the cook's talks have been scrubbed clean, okay? Because this was a reference to the way that Mao's son died in Korea, okay? I'm sorry for this digression. But returning to your question, Xi Jinping is not interested in anointing a successor, even though before the fall of Qin there was even speculation that he was grooming Qin at least for membership in the Politburo Standing Committee. Okay, but Xi is convinced that he will live forever. Okay, he's convinced that he has the magic bullet or whatever. Oh, by the way, I was told by one Chinese source that Xi is actually an avid Buddhist, particularly because of when he spent 15 years in Fujian, and he has become a convert of Maju, okay, who is the most famous artist in southern Fujian and in Taiwan, okay, Maju. So my Chinese source told me that every time he goes back to Fujian, he went and paid and worship at a Maju temple in southern Fujian. So anyway, I don't think this issue ever gets his real attention. And so returning to your the first question on this lady. Well, I'm glad that you spent many years in Beijing and expect me to call you up for information every night, okay? Well, the short answer is that this plan for 50,000 Chinese students getting PhD visas in the U.S. Is just something fake, because starting from Donald Trump, okay, Donald Trump closed down the Texas Chinese consulate general in Houston, okay, and Donald Trump, followed by Joe Biden, put an end to giving visas to potential PhD students in the STEM sector, okay, and this trend has even spread to Canada, okay, where I'm living now, because Canada recently famously rejected an application by a would-be PhD student on the ground that he had worked for a PLA company in China. So this otherwise well-qualified engineering student was denied a visa to Canada. Okay, even though before the Meng Wanzhou affair, Canada had very good relations with PRCs, particularly with the Trudeau clan. Okay, so I don't think whatever achievements in terms of improving relations between the two countries reached in the tete-a-tete between Biden and Xi, I don't think it amounts to much, because what we and Bloomberg are watching are the figures, the figures of the FDI, the figures of consumer spending, the figures of the level of loans being handed out by state Chinese banks and so forth. Okay, so we only look at figures. We don't necessarily interpret, promises made by leaders, right?
All right, so we're a little over time. We have a room full of busy Washingtonians, but I feel like we can ask one more question. You have works, Peter? Please.
My name is Maya Wang, Human Rights Watch. I think one of the, you were talking about how Xi Jinping was inspired by Han Feizi, the Loring State scholar. And a lot of, the past 10 years involves essentially ruling society by putting a cage over it.
Yes.
And you see how Chinese dynamism and optimism essentially kind of went down like this, which is a very different environment from the 10 years prior, where within a generation people own cars, live life of luxuries unimaginable to the one before it, and they happen all over the country. Corrections in small ways, like with the tech crackdown and so on, with the relationship with the US. But these kind of course corrections, is it enough to change the way people psychologically experience the future in the country, which was kind of the driver of growth in the last, prior to Xi Jinping?
Right, thank you. Well, as I said, we don't have a ballot box legitimacy within the Communist Party. There are only two pillars of legitimacy left. One is steady improvement of the standard of living of ordinary people, okay? The other one is nationalism. But now the first premise is gone, because the GDP has to grow, according to Zhou by at least 6-7% every year before the economy can generate a so-called trickle-down effect. Because if you look at the economic pie, the economic pie only grows by 4 or 5% each year, the bulk of the new money will be taken up, confiscated by the privileged classes. Okay, and you must remember that the Gini coefficient in China officially is 4.7, but unofficially something like 0.6. Okay, so this pillar of legitimacy, improvement in the livelihood of ordinary people is gone. Okay, so Xi is now putting undue weight on nationalism. Okay, the great renaissance of the Chinese people, and also the access, the China-centric access of autocratic states. Okay, consisting of China, and now Russia has become the key brother of China, for the first time in history. Even though this happened about 10 years ago when China started giving loans to Russia. Okay, but anyway, well, Xi Jinping is by no means a stupid person. He realizes that the FDI is very important. It has to come from US-based multinationals like Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, and so forth. He knows the importance of this, but unfortunately, recent reassurances by Premier Li Qiang at World Economic Forum and also other emissaries to the West, I think Wang Yi was in Africa and so forth, have not been working very well. Regarding the Global South, they were successful in the first 10 years of the Belt and Road Initiative, okay, when China still had sufficient US dollar reserves. But now the country is desperately short of US dollars, okay? You remember the much quoted figure of $3 trillion US foreign exchange reserves, okay? But these 3 trillion US dollars worth of foreign exchange reserves consist mostly of investments from the multinationals. They include loans made by the Chinese government, and so out of the 3 trillion US dollar foreign exchange reserve, I think the Chinese government can only mobilize maybe 10%, maybe just 300 billion US dollars, and much of the money has already been spent in wrapping up the value of the yuan, in the face of rapid devaluation of the yuan. Okay.
I think we better wrap up. But if people want to know more, you know that you can buy Willy's book early and often. So I recommend we will do that.
Well, just log on to Amazon. You can buy books that I wrote about Jiaozi, like Forever Hero, and books about Deng Xiaoping, Jiaozi, Jiang Zemin, and